It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Well, that's not true. It's actually very muggy now that I think about it. But um, I guess it's still a nice day for you to be my neighbor. Hello, neighbor. Um, got my carrot. That's the new theme, I guess, is if I'm filming outside, I got to go get some caribou. Um, I had a really fun idea for this video. Which was I was going to film it at night, and you can see my bonfire pit back there. I was going to set up a bonfire and be sitting around the bonfire at night, like film through the flames, kind of like when Mike in the Blair Witch was singing the Gilligan's Island theme song, and they were like filming through the campfire. Or no, I'm sorry, was it Josh? Yeah, I think it was Josh, because Mike's the one that points out that they're calling him the captain and it's the skipper. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. In any case, we're talking about 1997's The Edge. 97 or 94? I think it was 97. It was days ago that I looked that up, and I'm supposed to just remember? Please. Anthony Hopkins, confirmed killer Alec Baldwin. Accident. That's up for debate. Killed someone. That's fine. That is a weird thing, though, right? Like, you're in this position. Like, I don't know how, because watching this movie again, now that's kind of what I think about a lot when I look at Alec Baldwin. I'm just like, oh, you killed someone. And then I think, like, does he look in the mirror and does he have to think that all the time? And it's not even a judgment thing, because accidents happen. Unfortunately, tragic accidents happen. And you're all sort of signed up for some amount of risk, although obviously there wasn't supposed to be, but we don't have to get into the whole thing. But my point is, stuff goes sideways sometimes, and, we have to live with it. And like, you don't just curl up into a ball, all day, every day. But he must look at himself in the mirror and just be like, or just, like everything you do, there must be those like kind of constant little moments of like, oh, I killed somebody. Like, because now that's what I think when I look at him. It's like, it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of a movie or anything like that. But in the back of my brain, there's just those constant little ticks of like, oh, he killed somebody. And now, you see him in interviews and I'm just like, God, it's got to be weird to just be having a good time when you killed somebody. You know what I mean? And like, that's the biggest, most newsworthy thing you've done in a long time. And that's just going to be at the front of people's brains for a long time when they hear your name. It's weird. By the way, it's also really muggy today. So for as much as I wanted to start a fire. And by the way, I was going to just do the fire in the day today. And then I came out and it was kind of windy and the weather's like, well, it might suddenly thunderstorm. So I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to go to maybe all the trouble of making the fire. And now I'm kind of glad I didn't, because it's already insanely muggy. And then if I was also having to sit next to a fire, that would have been hell made real on earth. Not fun. Although I do love playing with fire. So maybe it would be fun. And I was going to like set up one of my, my skeleton like in the seat next to me. And I was going to, it was going to be fun. It was just going to be like, picture it, close, quit watching this. Just close your eyeballs, open your ear balls and just listen and imagine me sitting at a campfire with Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin and Bart the Bear. And we're just sharpening sticks into spears, talking about a great movie from the 90s. By the way, so if you haven't seen one, I would just say, if you're of a certain age, aka old like me, or if you are of a different age, which is to say young, the old, you need to go back and watch this movie again. However much you liked it. By the way, there's like constant hornets like bonking off the side of my house, and the noise is very upsetting. But in any case, I'm gonna soldier forward because I'm a professional. If you're old and you saw this movie in the 90s and haven't gone back to it, go back to it. Like, it is a great movie and it holds up. And I think in many ways is made even better now because modern Hollywood storytelling is so needlessly convoluted that something like this that is, very to film this movie back in the day, I think was kind of an impressive undertaking. They filmed it in Banff National Park in Canada, which is why I'm wearing my Banff Springs Herman the Merman t-shirt yet again. I'm actually filming that. I think in tomorrow's video, I think I am also wearing this shirt, but I did actually film that on a different day. So, and that's not the first time that's happened in a batch of videos, which makes me worry that I might need to wash my shirts more often. I don't know. But in any case, the movie is well, first of all, I should say old. Watch the movie again because it's awesome. It's better than you remember. If you're young and you haven't seen this movie, check it out. It's a great movie. It's a great ride. I think it is still a movie filled with suspense. I think there is so much great storytelling. It really takes you on that journey. And really, it's such a streamlined, again, it's like the filming was probably incredibly miserable and complicated because you're filming in the Canadian Rockies. You're filming in these real locations. You're filming in locations where you probably can't, tear down a bunch of trees to get equipment in, to get the perfect shot or whatever. I remember them talking about in Predator where they were just like, the jungle is too thick. Giant truck driving by. The jungle's too thick. It's not, we can't really get the shots we want. So they just cut out half the jungle to kind of get it to look the way that they want. Obviously, a national park, a treasure, you can't do that. So I'm sure it was just a giant pain in the butt for what is essentially sort of a very epic human story, but is a very streamlined, straightforward story of survival. And it's something I always credit Jeff Pennington of the M-Class podcast. It's a Star Trek podcast that I love very much and reference often in my day-to-day conversation. And Jeff, when they talked about the original Star Trek episode, Balance of Terror, which is, for my money, probably the best episode of the original series, Jeff talks about smart characters making smart decisions. And that's what that entire movie is. Or I'm sorry, that's what that entire episode of Star Trek is. It is two captains who are intelligent, who strategize, who are also both willing to be patient, willing to wait for the right opportunity to make a move or to show their hand. It is a movie. We always talk about movie logic, and it's like, well, why does this happen? Why did this character make this why did this character choose to do this thing? Well, because the movie had to happen, because we needed to get the characters into this place, and and that's something I think a lot of people will sometimes be able to just shut your brain off. And I think with a dumb movie that is fun, you sort of embrace the dumbness. But when a movie is smart, you want it to be consistently smart, and you don't want it to have a moment where it's like, well, yeah, your character should have just ran out of the house at that moment, and common sense tells you that person should have just run out of the house. But The Edge has that, like, I was thinking about that phrasing of smart characters making smart choices a lot watching The Edge again, because it's really, there's so little in that movie that I could really nitpick in terms of the decisions that characters make. There's a big one that I will point out, but it's a movie about survival. Just on the surface, it's characters who are in a plane crash in, the Canadian Rockies, and it's 3 characters, spoiler alert, eventually 2 characters. And guess what? There's 3 people. One's Anthony Hopkins, one's Alec Baldwin, the third is a guy. Guess which one gets eaten by the bear? Again, spoiler alert. I hope you have watched this movie, because we're just going to talk about it. It's that, it's that sort of fantasy of, well, what would I do in this situation? Again, it's being taken on a journey. So these characters crash land, they end up in a freezing cold lake. First you have to get warm. First you have to figure out, like, how do you dry off? How do you get warm? Then you have to figure out where you are. You have to figure out where you're going to get to, and how you're going to get there. And obviously that path is not going to be it's already a big undertaking, because you're hiking with no equipment across the Canadian Rockies. It's already going to be rough. And then, of course, there's more obstacles in the way for our characters than just the mountains. Bart the bear being probably the biggest. Bart was, by the way, Bart the bear was the real name of the bear in the movie. Bart was an actor bear. Was in a lot of stuff back then. I went and looked at his wiki after watching the movie, and unfortunately Bart died tragically young. I think he had cancer or bear leukemia, and I'm not, that sounds funny, but I think that might have been what it was. But yeah, Bart was prevalent in especially, I guess, maybe the late 80s and 90s. Good Lord, there's just bugs everywhere. They're like beetles. It's ridiculous. Something people should know about me. I love animals. I actually caught a bird in my work the other day and got him outside. I was pretty impressed with myself. Most bugs do not bother me at all, but hornets and wasps, and it's the way they're, like, a bug that can tuck their legs up when they fly. I'm a little better with bugs that, like, their arms dangle in that sinister way as they fly around. I am just truly disgusted with. They're like spiders of the air. I hate spiders, and I hate anything that wishes it was a spider. And I feel like hornets wish they were spiders. But in any case, this killer, this man-eater grizzly bear starts stalking our characters. Obviously, there's they're banged up. I think the scent of blood is in the air, and maybe our grizzly just hasn't had a warm meal in a while. But it is that level of storytelling alone really captivating, and obviously, especially Anthony Hopkins is just incredible. Like, I think he's taken for granted a little bit for just, well, yeah, of course he's a great actor. Like, everybody thinks of Anthony, it's like he's a legend. And sometimes I think when you're a legend, just like your sort of that legendary status trumps your talent. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of forget how good he is in some movies. He's not awesome in everything. I will say that, but this is the kind of movie where he's given so much to do, so much to chew on in terms of dialogue, in terms of, there's a lot going on. The other big sort of secondary plot to this movie is Anthony Hopkins is a rich, older man. He's a rich man of a certain age. He is married to Ella McPherson, who is a much younger supermodel. And then Alec Baldwin, whose name is Bob in the movie. And I'll get to it. I'm going to finish my thought. I'm going to do a rare thing and finish my thought before I jump onto the thing that I just thought of. Bob is a fashion photographer who works closely with Ella McPherson. I forget Ella McPherson's character's name, but there's some suspicions on the part of Anthony Hopkins about maybe some hanky-panky, some funny business, maybe some emotional cheating, maybe some physical cheating going on between Alec Baldwin and Ella McPherson. So he's suspicious of that going into the plane crash, and then obviously sort of the raw survival nature being pushed physically and emotionally to your limits and breaking you down. Those fears and questions, sort of continue to bubble to the surface about like what's going on with you two. And again, just going to fully spoil everything. In the end, it turns out he very cleverly, and the movie does a great job again of taking you on this journey, but Anthony Hopkins discovers a little bit of evidence that pretty much proves what's going on with Bob and Anthony Hopkins, whose name is Charles in the movie, his wife. And once they are in a position where they sort of know they're finally safe enough to get out, they find an old hunting cabin, they find a little canoe. So it's basically, okay, like we're going to be okay. We can just take the canoe down the river and we'll find civilization. Once they're essentially, there's a clear path to rescue, Bob decides he's going to kill Charles, because he is in love with Charles' wife. He also probably thinks, I'll kill him. I'll marry Ella McPherson, and Ella McPherson will have all that sweet, sweet Charles money. It doesn't quite go as Bob plans, but it's so well done. And because when you're in this survival situation, we as the audience can see some flirtation with Bob and Ella McPherson. But it's played very, not smart, but it's played very understated and in a perfect way, where if you're somebody who overthinks, if you're somebody who is possessive, if you're somebody who's jealous, you could look at those little interactions with Bob and Ella McPherson. And I'm just going to say her full name every time, because just calling her Ella just feels weird to me. Or is it Elle McPherson? Is it Ella McPherson or Elle McPherson? I think it's Ella McPherson. But you can look at those little interactions and be like, oh, there's something going on there. There's you can't tell me there's nothing there. But then I was actually watching it this time around and kind of looking at it like, well, you could say it's flirty, but you could also say it's friendly. And you could say these are people who work very closely together all the time. And the way they played it was so well done and almost so real that I really like the fact that the movie, until the end, was showing it to us and sort of saying, well, maybe Charles is just jealous, because he's maybe, he's older, not even that old, but he's older, and he's kind of a boring guy. And they sort of talk about that where, he's now, his wife works in this industry that is sort of full of big characters and, and excitement. Now they're flying, out into the Canadian wilderness to do these, elaborate photo shoots, which, by the way, by now today's standards, we would call wildly culturally insensitive photo shoots with Ella McPherson. But I like the fact that the movie doesn't make them like evil. It doesn't make them, and it doesn't even make it like they're flaunting an affair in Charles's face, or like, it's nothing like that. They're just playing it where there's just a couple extra little looks at each other. It's just a little bit playful, a little bit longer than maybe it should have been, or what, like glances last a little longer. It's like that kind of real understated storytelling, to where it is also kind of out of the blue when Charles sort of makes his first accusation of like, something's going on with you two. It's really well done. So you have this great story of just survival, and it is occasionally very harrowing, very action-packed, by 1997 standards. Obviously, by today's standards, everything would be computer-generated, and at some point, probably, there would be an earthquake, and the mountain would split in two, and they would like be falling down and be hanging on for dear life. And then there would probably be, they would accidentally, it would open an ancient Ice Age cave where 1,000 Ice Age mega bears were, mega grizzlies, proto grizzlies, had been frozen in ice, and they would thaw. And it would probably, all characters would be played by Chris Pratt and Pedro Pascal, because they play everything. Why have other actors? Peter Dinklage would probably be the third guy. I mean, he has to die. Like, there has to be a third guy that dies. Who would be? No, that's a good question. In like modern Hollywood, who's that actor? Who's the actor who's like, he's in a lot of stuff? Because, by the way, the actor that's the third guy in The Edge, he is a guy that you see all over the place. Right now I can only think of The Matrix. He was in The Matrix, but he's one of those guys where you're like, oh, he's like in a billion things. I don't know who that actor would be. That's a great question for the comments, instead of you sitting here watching me think for 5 minutes trying to come up with a name. You tell me, who would be a great third guy that has to die halfway through the movie, if they remade this in 2025. So yeah, and I guess I should say that is maybe the only big logic hole or sort of easy movie convenience to sort of move the story forward, however you want to say it. But the third guy is given the task by Anthony Hopkins of whittling some spears out of some big sticks. And somehow he cuts his leg. So a big spear, you'd be cutting like this, I guess, or, maybe like this. Somehow he cuts his leg. And when they look at the wound, it looks like he just stabbed his leg, just went, ugh. It's just like, because it's not like a slash. It's like one deep cut, like straight in cut to the bone. That is obnoxious. And it happens off screen. They're just like, Charles and Bob are just chit-chatting. And all of a sudden you just hear, ah! And they run over and he's like, oh, I did a stupid thing. And that, gets the ball rolling on some blood in the air, bear-fueled action. It's just it's really hard to, like, if I, like, talked about what happened in the movie. What kind of time am I at? 24 minutes? Oh my God, I'm sorry, guys. I've been just jibber jabbering on. Um, but if you really walk through sort of just what happens in this movie, like a bullet point list of like just kind of things that happen, it's very straightforward. It feels, I mean, granted, it's like there are big time cuts, like time jumps from, you know, sort of obviously it edits out days and days of surviving in the wilderness, but it's kind of showing you like every time something actually happened where they weren't just walking or they weren't just sleeping or resting. These are all of the things that happened during this week or however long they've been, lost. It's such a streamlined, simple story. It never lets up. It's always doing something. It never felt like it was spinning its wheels. It is just kind of a masterclass in this old-fashioned kind of studio filmmaking. And it's the kind of thing that I wish we would go back to. I think it's, again, I don't know how expensive or cheap this movie would be to make now. A lot of it's like, who knows? But I feel like sometimes, because that had to have been expensive in the day, but I feel like people, like Hollywood thinks if a movie's going to cost a lot of money, like big things have to be happening in it. It's like if it's going to cost money, it's got to look like it was expensive. It's like, I want the money on the screen kind of a thing. Where something like this that is, obviously it's a very action-packed, tense, thrill, it's not to say that nothing's happening that like wouldn't be expensive, but it's more like it feels small by today's standards, but it would be such a, and it's a weird thing to say for a movie like with a gigantic grizzly bear attacking Anthony Hopkins, on a waterfall in the Canadian Rockies. It's like it's very impressive, and there's a lot of beautiful shots of especially the airplane when they're flying back and forth, of like flying through these mountain ranges. And I mean, there's so much natural beauty up there. Again, I was just there. We were trying to figure out actually like where things got filmed. I did stay in a hotel that Alec Baldwin stayed in. Not to brag, but also the Queen of England had stayed there and Marilyn Monroe had stayed there. But obviously the big exciting name was Alec Baldwin. Yeah, that's it. I don't have time to talk about anything else. Otherwise, I would continue to ramble. But great movie. Check it out if you haven't. It's just so smart, so much fun. And yeah, thank you everybody for watching. If you watched this long into this video and you have not subscribed yet, please, for the love of all that is Alec Baldwin, please subscribe to this channel. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye. All right, I'm going to hit stop record.